Welcome to Books Boys, live from the Grand Library, the Dean and PJ.
It's PJ.
Hello there, everyone. What's up?
I'm the Dean, and we are the Books Boys.
The Books Boys, the one and only.
This is the Books Boys show. Get it? Buy it? Books.
Books.
PJ, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yes, I think I'm slowly getting to understand what books are. They're a collection of papers, and they've got ink on them.
They've got ink. This is what we learned. We thought last month they were toilet roll, but they've got ink on. That's the difference, you see.
Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, and they're supposed to. It's quite a bizarre concept, actually. It's supposed to be you take a tree, and you have to forgive the tree. I say, can I take your wood, and then basically you get a lot of thin sheets of paper, basically. And supposedly there's a whole universe. I don't know how this works, Dean, but supposedly there's a whole universe, a whole different life in between the pages of a book that came from a tree with ink that probably came from an octopus. So let
me see if I understood this correctly. You take around 700 pieces of paper. On about 50 of them, you write a kind of love story. And then on the rest, I assume you write some kind of agricultural manual, right?
That is the code, guys. That is the best-selling method of the Anna Karenina method. So if you want to write a book, if you want to write a big epic book, don't worry about it. Just get that story. That's a bit difficult, the 50-page story, and then just get yourself a nice agricultural manual and kind of mix it in. Have the story in the middle. It's a best-selling. Look, it's a best-selling method, right, Dean?
It's the way to do it. It really is. I think that's
it's the way
to do it. Yeah. Become an immediate classic.
There you go. So we've read a lot of books this month.
We've read more books than usual, but we're going to try to keep it concise because the episodes are getting just too damn long.
We're going to
try to be concise.
So who wants to go first?
I can go first if you want.
All right, go ahead.
To be fair, I'm only going to talk about 4 books, but I've actually read a lot more than that.
Yeah, you actually have. I was just about to say. But you're going to you're explaining that in a second what it is. Go ahead.
I'll explain. Yeah. So the first book I read was an Agatha Christie book, and you can hear about that on Caper Captains at patreon.com/booksboys. And the last book I read, which I'm going to finish tomorrow, is another Agatha Christie for next month's Caper Captains. Okay. Nice. And I also read the Odyssey, the famous Greek book by Homer, the epic poem. And I read that for an upcoming crossover with the history podcast, Well, That Aged Well. And we'll have a nice crossover bonus episode coming out maybe next month with that.
Looking forward to that.
And actually, I read that in the swimming pool in a day and a half. So
you read the Odyssey in a day and a half?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Now, I have to confess.
Call it 2 days if you must.
I have to confess, I tried reading it and I couldn't finish it. I mean, like, I know it's supposed to be great, but it's just it's very complex, guys. It's well, anyway, what did you think? I know you're going to mention just very briefly. Did you
just briefly? It? I can talk. I can take 2 minutes. I think it's a really amazing piece of literature.
Right.
Now, are you sure it was the Odyssey you're thinking of and not the Iliad? Because I couldn't finish the Iliad.
The Iliad
I couldn't
was
finish it.
really
tough going.
Okay.
The Odyssey is more of a novel. It is more of a story.
Okay.
The Iliad is just endless lists of names and descriptions.
And just, Dean, because I think a lot of readers have the same question, do I have to read the Iliad before I read the Odyssey, though? No, so do I have to read the Iliad before I read the Odyssey?
So technically the Iliad is during the war and the Odyssey is after the war.
Yes,
so in a sense, it's a sequel. But it is a self-contained piece of work and it's much more accessible.
Okay.
So I would actually recommend starting with the Odyssey.
Okay, cool.
And then I would recommend starting and giving up on the Iliad. So. That's my personal recommendation. It's not worth reading, but the Odyssey is really good.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
So other than that, I read 4 more books that I am actually going to talk about. To be honest, I'm only really going to focus on 3. The first one's not going to take long. But the first book I read is A Monk's Guide to Happiness, Meditation in the 21st Century by Geelong Thubton.
Wow. Okay.
Now, this is a Sunday Times bestseller. I picked it up in Waterstones. This is the first book I've bought in a bookshop for full price, so not a secondhand bookshop, in about 6 years.
Wow. Okay.
But I felt that it was time to try some meditation,
Indeed. I often said so to yourself.
That's it. You've told me for a while, times are tough and everything. And I just thought, I'm stressed with work, with the pandemic, with everything else. It'll do no harm to try a meditation book.
Cool.
So obviously, there's not a lot to review here in the sense that there's no plot. It's also very short. It's about 200 pages, and there's not much writing on these pages. In terms of a normal novel, I would call this about 150 pages.
Okay.
And that includes, some talk about his life as a monk. Going into he started off with a party kind of stressed out lifestyle, and then he went into some, he became a monk and he went into a few month long retreat, and eventually ended a 4-year retreat, and now he does a lot of ambassador type work and seminars and things like that. So that's basically his story. But he's been doing this now for 25 years, and he's now written, I think he's written a second book as well, to be honest. But he's written this book, and it just gives you, his story isn't really that interesting to me, but it gives you some meditation exercises at the end of each chapter as well.
Right.
So some of those will be based on, he says not to worry too much about overthinking it, not to focus too much on trying to shut out all your thoughts. Just doing it is the important thing. And maybe one exercise will be based on, focusing on your breathing, but another might be focusing on looking at an object, and another one might be focused on listening to a particular sound or whatever. So there's a range of different exercises with a different focus to meditate on. So and I did find it quite helpful.
Great. Any particular technique that you've been using ever since you've read that book that is really helping your life, making you happy?
The very first time I did it, I actually felt it quite strongly, but then it weakened. And the last week or so, I haven't done any, so I do need to kind of get back to it.
What was it? What was the first technique?
The first one, it was about letting the feeling go all up your body. So it was about starting to focus on your toes and kind of working up towards your head, up through the torso, and just kind of feeling the kind of energy through your body. That was the technique that hit me more than focusing on sights or sounds, to be honest.
Wow. Okay, that's a technique I actually use every few days or so. Lisa taught me that, especially after doing a physical activity like yoga, and then you sit down and you concentrate on perhaps feeling joy from your giving yourself a mental massage, actually starting from your toes to the bottom. And there's a different meditation where it's also letting the fear inside and feeling it and really embracing it, because it's also a kind of feeling the whole body. Interesting.
It was helpful for me because I was always put off meditation by not really knowing what to do. So it's actually useful to have it written down in a book in front of you, telling you what to do, because I work quite well that way.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah.
And this is quite a new book as well. It's only published 2019, so it's probably one of the newest books I've ever actually reviewed and read on the show, because normally I'm set in the past.
Victorian times.
No, PJ, I had to swiftly correct this by immediately then reading another Jane Austen.
Indeed, you did. Of course, you needed your pre-Victorian. Moral kind of tales. Yes, indeed.
I did, and I'm almost finished my way through them now, which is good. She only has 6 novels, and for some strange reason, I only have 5 of them in my house. This is the 4th, so there is only one more for me. But this is Persuasion. Right. Now, PJ, I'm going to try to persuade you here that this is her worst novel, at least out of the 4 I've read so far. Yeah, it's the worst.
Is this the one that was published posthumously as well? As well,
yes. Unlike most of her novels, where she would write an early draft and then come back to it, this is one that she wrote at the end of her life, and then it was published, a few months after she died.
So she probably next year. She probably didn't have time to revise.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, some of the reviews say that it's her most advanced novel in terms of her writing style, because she had time to develop, as a writer. I don't see it, to be honest. I find it very dull.
Okay.
And it's a short one as well. I think it's about 250 pages or so, if I can remember correctly. It's not a massively long novel. I don't want to say it loses its way. I want to say that it kind of never really gains its way to begin with. So here's what happens, right? We have the Elliot family. So we have the father and the eldest daughter, Elizabeth. There's two other daughters, Mary and Anne. So Mary's already off and married, and she does a bit of the old nagging housewife and curtain jerking, complaining about the neighbors who are actually relatives and all that kind of thing. So that's Mary. She's sort of to the side. Elizabeth is the mistress of the household because the mother's dead, and she's very close with the father, Mr. Elliot, and they do their whole thing together. They're running the house, and that's their vibe, and that's grand. Then we have Anne. Now, Anne starts off as the kind of unimportant sister. Okay. Now, in all these Jane Austen books, there's always 3 or 4 sisters. There's always one that's totally irrelevant. But in this book, and maybe she did develop as a writer, because in this book she flips it. All of a sudden, Anne becomes the lead character, which you don't see coming in the early, the first chapter or two. So what's basically happening is the family are running out of money. They need to rent out their house and move to Bath, just like they went to Bath in Northanger Abbey, which was my favorite.
Well, what's the thing with Bath? Because I thought Bath was like a place where you get cured.
Because English people just like to go there. It's their favorite. They used to call it a watering hole, is the expression.
Sure, it was. I think it was the first thermal bath made by the Romans in England. Yeah.
I've never been now, to be honest, but
love to go.
So basically what happens is, they go there. Anne joins them a little bit later because there's a girl in the family, or a lady in the family called Lady Russell, and she's a kind of cousin or something like that. She's the only one who takes any notice of Anne. So Anne spends a lot of time with her rather than with her father and sister, because they just disregard her completely. And there's an example where they're talking about, well, when's Anne joining us? And the sister Elizabeth says, well, I'm sure nobody here wants her. She can stay as long as she wants with Lady Russell. She's not needed here. So she's completely disregarded. Now, what happens is the people who rent out the house are Admiral Croft and his wife, Sophia, I believe it is. But what actually happens is the brother of that wife is a certain Captain Wentworth, who Anne used to be almost engaged to. So she's now thinking, this chap's going to come back on the scene. I've not seen him in years. We were, walking out together. We were almost sort of officially engaged, but not quite. And Lady Russell said he wasn't right for me and told me not to marry him. And off he went. So he's coming back. But at the same time, they run into another Mr. Elliot, who is actually the heir, because the girls can't inherit. So it's a distant cousin, Mr. Elliot, that they don't really know, who is the heir. Now, they met him one summer and invited him to the house, and he didn't go. And then it turned out he fell out with the family, and he's a bit of a rascal, and they don't like him. But he also reappears on the scene and tries to court Anne as well. So she goes from being irrelevant to actually having 2 suitors that she has to choose between.
Okay, and I suppose they have to persuade her.
They have to persuade her. Now, I have a quote or two here. It's quite funny, this one here. But I hate to hear you talking so, like a fine gentleman, as if women were all fine ladies instead of rational creatures. We none of us expect to be in smooth water all our days. So there's a little bit of equality and feminism coming in here from Jane Austen. She's actually saying in this one not to mollycoddle the ladies.
Does she not do that with her earlier novel so much, no?
Maybe a snippet here or there, but that was the first time I really saw this is an actual usable kind of quote. It's very strongly stated.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool.
And here's another that gives you a good idea of things. So this is just to give you an idea of the vibe in the novel. You will wonder, said she, what has been fixing my eye so long? But I was looking after some window curtains, which Lady Alicia and Mrs. Frankland were telling me of last night. They described the drawing room window curtains of one of the houses on this side of the way and this part of the street as being the handsomest and best hung of any in Bath. I could not recollect the exact number, and I've been trying to find out which it could be, but I confess I can see no curtains hereabouts that answer their description. So they have boring lives, PJ, because they're spending a lot of time talking about a neighbour's curtains, so that's the kind of setting that we're in.
And you always tell me, whenever you tell me about these Victorian and pre-Victorian novels, you always tell me about these women, he just they leaned her head on daddy's knees and stuff and talk about curtains. I just it doesn't. I'm not sure. You're not really selling it too much to me. I love these.
No,
novels.
I like the idea of it, but I think in practical terms, it might not be a fun lifestyle. But here's a
I think
quotation.
you just love the clothes, don't you? You just love like
I love
the
the
way they
clothes.
dress and like
And the way they
the
speak.
antics.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Here's a quote that gives you Elizabeth's personality. So she says, "Very well, I have nothing to send but my love. Oh, you may as well take back that tiresome book that she would lend me and pretend I have read it through. I really cannot be plaguing myself forever with all the new poems and states of the nation that come out. Lady Russell quite bores one with her new publications. You need not tell her so. But I thought her dress hideous the other night. I used to think she had some taste in dress, but I was ashamed of her at the concert. Something so formal and arrangé in her air, and she sits so upright. My best love, of course." So just a lot of backstabbing and bitter, gossiping kind of going on, and yeah. That's all I have to say really about Persuasion. The only last thing I want to say about it is there's actually the version I have comes with an alternate ending.
Oh, really?
So there's two endings. There's the original removed ending, which was actually shorter, more concise, and wrapped everything up with the theme of persuasion and brought the story back to the Crofts who rented the house, which is a large part of the book at the beginning.
Okay.
The ending that they put on that she wrote like a few months later was actually longer, more convoluted, more drawn out, and didn't wrap the story up and didn't talk about persuasion. So I don't know why why she changed that ending. I much prefer the original ending actually than the new ending.
Okay.
Yeah, it just brought everything full circle because the first quarter of the novel is just about renting out the house. So that becomes irrelevant. And I thought, well, at least this version ties it back.
Yeah. Okay. Rather than just leave it hanging there.
Yeah. So after that, I followed in through our Victorian period, and I came to a certain Madame Bovary.
Madame Bovary, the classic.
The classic. Now, have you read this one, PJ?
No, but we did talk about it.
We talked about it. I wasn't sure if you'd read it or not.
I meant to read it. So Gustave Flaubert, written in the 1840s, was it? Or was it a bit later?
I believe 18... Let me just double check. I wanted to say... I want to say 36 or 56. Let me just quickly double check.
So, guys, this is a French classic around Balzac's era, but it's slightly later.
56, yeah, 56.
Yeah, slightly later than Balzac. So going beyond basic realism into something else. So tell us about it. Like I only know about the book and about the time period, but actually I haven't read it yet. So what did you think?
I'll tell you where my confusion comes from in the dates. Old Goriot that we did last time was 1835.
Yes.
And this one was then 1856.
Yeah.
So typically Flaubert stuff comes, a little bit after Balzac's. And again, we're moving forward in time. If we go back to Jane Austen, we're talking 1818 for the book I just reviewed. So we're progressing through time here. And I like this one. What I like about Flaubert versus Balzac is that the realism is not as jagged. It doesn't punch me as much. It doesn't make me cry. It doesn't affect me. It's not as strong, but in a way, it's nicer.
Tell me this. There's been a lot of comparison between Anna Karenina and Madame Bovary. Anything you can see between that? Because I haven't read Madame Bovary.
Yes. There is a certain. So the lead character. There is a certain similarity in the characters.
Okay.
But Flaubert accidentally forgot to include the farming manual.
Oh.
So that's where the similarities end. It's a shorter book, PJ. It's a shorter book.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, here's an interesting thing. This book's about 300 pages. I read it again, I think, in about 2 days. Whereas Persuasion, although it's actually shorter, took me a week to read just because it was so boring.
So Madame Bovary, so what's so good about it?
Right. It hit me right where I want to be hit it. So basically that sentence didn't make any sense. It hit me right where I wanted to be hit. So basically what we have is this girl, this Madame Bovary, she is seeking something that I've spent a lot of time seeking, which is this romanticism in life. So
Indeed.
Before I kind of focus on her, I should take a little step back. We have this chap, Charles, and he doesn't really like his wife, but then his wife dies. So that's fine. So he goes, he's a doctor, so he goes to help a chap, and while he's there, falls in love with her daughter, and that's the one who he then marries, and that's the Madame Bovary of the book. Okay.
Okay.
So it's his second wife, actually. So he didn't like the first wife, but he's madly in love with the second one, and he'll basically do anything for her. She doesn't really feel the same way.
Oh, Lord.
Regrets marrying him, and all she wants is something more. She spends her whole time wanting, where's the poetry in life? She wants, I made a song once. What do I want to do when I grow up? I want to live in a Renoir painting. She wants that.
And Renoir came like just a few years later, maybe 15 years later.
Yeah.
So, but by the way, Madame Bovary is supposed to be like, it's supposed to be almost a parody of Don Quixote. So Gustav Flaubert, I read about this, that he was very influenced by Don Quixote in that sense of the story of the man, in this case, a woman who wants to go back in the past and live this romantic lifestyle, like yourself, Dean, if I may say.
Like me, and that is what she wants, actually. And yes. I have a quote here that will actually give it to you quite concisely, because she wants. Okay, so the girls would often slip out of the schoolroom and go see her. She knew by heart the love songs of the last century, singing them to herself as she plied her needle. She would tell stories, bring you the news, do your errands in town, and lend the big girls clandestinely one of the novels she always kept in the pocket of her apron, from which the good lady herself devoured long chapters in the intervals of her task. This is just some old maid that she knew growing up that she got this influence. They were about love letters, loving, martyred maidens swooning in secluded lodges, postilions slain every other mile, horses ridden to death on every page, dark forests, aching hearts, promising, sobbing kisses and tears, little boats by moonlight, nightingales in the grove, gentlemen brave as lions, yet also tender as lambs somehow, virtuous as a dream, always well dressed, and weeping pints. So she wants Dumas, basically.
Indeed, yeah, okay. So she's kind of living in the past, the same as Don Quixote living in the past and reading those swashbuckle kind of books,
yeah, and that's the world that she wants to live in. And I at the start I liked her and I empathized with her until I realized that she is the villain of the piece. Her poor long-suffering husband, who would just do anything for her, and she goes off and similar to Sentimental Education, the other Flaubert book that we read, but she has two affairs. Okay, so first she's with a chap I believe called Leon, and then she's with a certain Rodolphe. Okay.
Leon.
Now she spends Leon. Nothing really much happens in the beginning. He kind of goes off, but then she falls in love with Rudolph, and she's really, really quite in love with him. And at one point, she thinks they might get caught. That she thinks that Charles might catch them. And this is what really made me hate her. This is how little she cares about the husband who dotes on her. Someone's coming. Do you have your pistols? Why? Why, to defend yourself. And he says, against your husband, poor lad. And he basically says, look, I'm having sex with his wife, but I don't want to kill the poor man. Like, he's never done anything against me. But she was perfectly happy to see him shoot her husband dead. And it's that made me dislike her.
But it's interesting because it's bringing in it's bringing in that unrealism that comes later, even though it's still the realist period. It becomes something else and comes into symbolism, modernism now. So it seems to be ahead of its time of just in having that absurdist kind of character. I mean, that's very absurdist. It's very modernist, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but she's going away to see Rudolph, like on a regular basis. They end up having these meetings. It goes on for a couple of years, I think. But Rudolph thinks he's in control. His plan is just to get a girl, have a fling, and move on. He's done this before. But she falls in love, and she becomes actually very demanding and controlling of him. And he almost, he falls in love as well, and they plan to run away together. And I'm not going to, give any spoilers about what happens, but there's one sort of guy then, I should say. So Charles is the doctor in this little village, and at one point, like, he up sticks and moves to another village for her at her request, and then she can, cheats on him there anyway. Like, it's sad. He does anything. And even when people are accusing her all around town, because she's very open and blatant about it, he won't believe a word said against her. To the end, he never will believe a bad word. And at one point, they persuade Charles to try to cure. There's a chap with a clubbed foot, who's a bit of a problem with his leg, and he limps around or whatever. And they decide to try to cure it using, Victorian techniques. And he's persuaded on by the local pharmacist, who kind of dotes on him. Actually, he's his rival, but you don't realize that, and you think he's his friend. And he's constantly kind of pushing him on, and respect for the doctor and all that kind of thing. And so what happens is they try this technique, which does not work, and makes the poor chap much, much, much worse. It's an absolute disaster. And he says, like, I could lose everything. I could be prosecuted. dishonored, completely ruined and lost.
Hmm.
And his Emma, which is Madame Bovary, sitting opposite, was watching him. She did not share his humiliation. She had her own to endure, that she had ever thought such a man could be worth anything. So she pushes him on to do it, and then when it doesn't work, doesn't feel bad for him, feels bad for herself for being associated with him. It's really sad, actually.
Wow, okay. Crazy. But nevertheless, he said it was very gripping, and I read it in 2 days.
Yeah.
And Flaubert, he worked on what he called le mot juste, the exact word. So he's very pedantic. He took a long time to write this novel, 5 years, 6 years, 5 years, I think. I think. Do you find, and I think this might be lost translation, maybe, but do you find like that, nevertheless, that the way that's written, that's very exact, or do you feel like there's a lot of rambling going on, a la Tolstoy?
No, I find it more exact. It's a short book,
That's
actually, and I don't find it too rambling at all. I think it flows really well, and it made me want to finish it, immediately. It's a very addictive book.
Wow. Okay.
And here's the thing: I'm not going to tell you anything about the ending, but in a small sense, she does get her comeuppance in a very romanticized way, which is fun. Almost irony that she wants this ultra romance, and she does kind of get it. But she falls totally in love with Rudolph, and she says, no, she wants him to have never loved anyone before. And he says, well, did you think I was a virgin? And laughs at her, because he's been doing this for years with various women.
Okay, interesting.
But she wants the ultra romance from him, and he kind of plays at it for a while with her. But that's it. It's not really going anywhere. But this is a really, really, really great novel, and I would highly, of all the books that I'm going to discuss today, it's the one I recommend most.
Wow, okay. Guys, not just Dean loves it, but I mean, for example, Mario Vargas Llosa from episode 1, who wrote The City, La Ciudad de los Perros, he actually wrote a whole book about Madame Bovary and Flaubert. So, yeah, called the Perpetual Orgy, actually. He actually wrote a whole book just about that book. That's how much he loved it. And also Michel Foucault, who I really loved, the philosopher, was a big fan. And also kind of like the people who came after Flaubert, like Guy de Maupassant, who I really love, the short story writer, so the big short story writer, was a big admirer of Flaubert. And in fact, they say that he might have been Guy de Maupassant's father, a legitimate father as well. So that's another great author came afterwards. Émile Zola was a naturalism, also loved Flaubert. Franz Kafka, Nabokov, Coetzee, all these authors, they all really admire, particularly Madame Bovary, as well as Sentimental Education, Flaubert in general.
This was better than Sentimental Education, by the way.
Oh yes,
by a long stretch. Yeah, we covered it on, I think, episode
that's right. Yes, of course, I forgot about that.
3. This was better.
Yeah, you weren't that impressed. I remember that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Cool.
The problem is, I was new to Flaubert and Goriot, and Balzac. Sorry, and this time I didn't read it with old Goriot. I read it a month apart. But last time I did Sentimental Education and Cousin Bette, a Balzac book, back to back, and just the 1-2 punch of it was too much for me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
I remember it. You weren't that impressed.
Yeah. And the last book that I want to talk about, and I'm going to be fairly brief. I took your recommendation, PJ, but I've gone astray. So I went to Benito Perez Galdós, and I went to a bookshop in Orense in Galicia.
Yeah.
And I asked for a recommendation, and he recommended Trafalgar.
Oh, good Lord.
Now, the poor chap, he gave it to me for free, actually.
Bless him.
With some nice bookmarks. I bought a lot of books, and he gave me, one for free. And he was a lovely fellow. But I read this in Spanish, and I've read other books in Spanish. I mean, we read all the Zafón books. I struggled with this one, and I didn't know if it was the language or if it was just a boring story. But then I spoke to you, and you said, no, it's kind of boring. This book, man, this is 180 pages. It took me like a week and a half. I couldn't get through it.
When you told me that you got that book, and we talked in the last episode, I'm a huge big fan, Benito Perez Galdós. For those of you who didn't get the chance to listen to our awesome, almost 2-hour episode last month,
guys.
We went on about it, that he is one of my favorite authors, and that I like him. Oh, just as much as, well, I can't say that, but Just as much as Dickens and Balzac. I say that those three, Dickens, Balzac, and Benito Cárdenas, are the big three realist authors of the not early, but like the 1830s. Excuse me, not Galdós. He came afterwards. Galdós came like 1880s, but he started realism in Spain. And you chose my least favorite book from Benito Cárdenas, and I've read a lot of his books. Trafalgar is the first book of Episodios Nacionales, which is a huge epic series of historical novels set in 19th century Spain, starting with the Battle of Trafalgar of 1805. And it sounds epic, actually. And it might get better, but I thought it was so dull, this novel, Trafalgar. Sorry.
It was, yeah. It's not great. I feel bad. I mean, the chap's from your town, right? So you know
he's
more than I do.
He's on Gran Canaria. Yeah, no, I've been to
Las Palmas, right?
I've been to his house.
Actually. Yeah,
I've been to.
But here's the. I mean, don't get me wrong. I bought one, maybe two more Galdós, so there will be future episodes where I will try the other ones.
And what are the titles?
I've got here. Is it Misericordia?
Yeah. So yes. So Mercy, Misericordia is a good. Later Galdós, really naturalist. I love it. Yeah,
I've got that one on my bookshelf. I think there might be another one that I left behind in Spain that I can get another time.
Okay.
But yeah, so there will definitely be more. But this one, I mean, so here's what happens. He follows the Anna Karenina method. Okay, so at the beginning, there's a little bit of story, and this chap, he's working in this house, and he kind of falls in love with the girl there, but she likes two other guys, and beginning he thinks he doesn't like them, but then they all go off to the war together. Then just insert 60% of the book is just lots of details about the war, and it's very tedious and very boring, Iliad style, and then at the end we wrap up with a bit more story.
It's not great.
God, I struggled to get through. I won't even watch a war movie. It's just not something I'm interested in. And
sorry,
battleship scenes in intricate detail for like 100 pages. Like I really struggled to get through it.
Interesting enough, it came a bit before Anna Karenina. So if anything, Tolstoy actually he might have read that and thought, 1873. Anna Karenina is 1877. No, guys, read Galdós, but try to avoid Trafalgar, right? It's not.
And the start is okay because there's a bit of story and some characters, and the end is okay. And he thinks, have my friends died? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, and it's nice, right? I'm not going to sort of say what happens in the story, but it's just so much of it is just, it turns into the Iliad or something, just describing like a blow by blow account of the fighting, and it's very, very dull. And but basically, Trafalgar. So it was the English versus. Sorry about this, PJ. It's the English versus the Spanish and the French, right? So we're pitted against each other here, but it was. It's very dull. I don't know. I don't recommend this one, to be honest.
No, I can't. I don't recommend either. But I recommend Galdós, guys, for all of you. It's one of his earlier novels. I think it's a really early novel too. So
it is, because obviously, as you say, it was the first of the national episodes, so it was quite early.
Yes. So, although I like his early novels too, but I think this one might have been just like he might have been slightly immature. I'm curious about the other ones, but it's so dull that I just didn't want to continue Episodios Nacionales. But yeah, guys, read.
That's not how I feel. Yeah.
Read Benito Pérez Galdós, but try to get him in this kind of mixture of romantic and realist moods. Don't get him in the historical kind of drama. My duty. This was a bit of a bestseller though at the time. Like the Spanish.
The start and end are good. It was just that most of it, this middle 3/5, I couldn't cope with.
Yeah, no, it was very Well, let me tell you about the books I've read. So I've had a great reading month. I did more reading than usual. I confess, people, I haven't been reading as much lately the last few months because I've been, no excuses actually. Yeah, my excuses I've been busy writing. Actually, that's my excuse. But anyway, so I really was feeling stressed out actually around the end of May, and I really needed something. I needed like a good story. I needed something that's philosophical. And that would bring me up though. Nothing too dark philosophical, you see. So I really needed like an upbeat novel. I wanted kind of a self-help novel. And my intuition was right. There was a Michael Ende book in my bookshelf that's been waiting for years. So Michael Ende, or known as Michael Ende, is a German author, kind of like was born, perhaps he was born during the Second World War or just before that. His father was a surrealist painter, like a proper surrealist painter of the time,
Okay,
in the
good.
30s. And so he had the background of like his father drawing these surrealist Dali, these dreamlike paintings,
Yeah.
influenced by Freud. And Michael Ende started writing these stories in the 60s, late 50s, 60s, that were really, really surreal and like intensely surreal. Kind of, they were considered children's literature, but he always said that he wasn't really thinking about it. He just was kind of like just writing for himself. And he wrote the famous book, The Never Ending Story, Die unendliche Geschichte. Have you ever seen the film, Dean?
I can't remember details, but it sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure I have seen it at some point.
It's an awesome film, 80s. So there you go. Awesome film, loved it. Haven't read the book, so I'm really looking forward to it. So this was my first Michael Ende book because I loved the movie, The Unending Story. And this book wasn't The Unending Story. This book was Momo. Momo and the Momo. God, I'm trying to translate it from the German now. Something like Momo and the story, or Momo, or the story of how the girl brought back time to the people, brought back the lost time to the people. And I think in English it's just known as Momo and the Great Gentleman, which is a bit of a ridiculous title, I think. But anyway, but the Great Gentleman, who are they? So it's a great story. Without spoiling it too much, epic story. It's Momo basically starts off with this girl who is basically she just appeared. It's set in a kind of a fictional Italy. I thought it was Greece, but I read afterwards Italy is very fictional.
Oh.
It's very kind of his subjective impression of Italy. It's a very dreamlike.
Right.
And she goes to an amphitheater, and she just stays there, and the people come to her from the village and say, "Oh, who are you?" And she says, "Momo." "Well, who called you Momo?" I call myself Momo." "Do you have parents?" "No." "How old are you?" She says, "100s," because it's the only digit she knows, actually. That's why she says 100.
Whoa, okay.
And she says, actually, she doesn't know, she's been there from the beginning. And the thing is, Momo has this gift, and it's at the beginning. There are a few segments of the book, and the first segment is just Momo and her friends. It's very innocent. It's very kind of like almost enlightened, kind of completely innocent. Just we meet her friends. There's a kind of a Heidi atmosphere. In fact, Momo, I think, is quite inspired by Heidi. It's just this very kind of wild child, innocent, kind of like barefoot. But she an orphan, except she really doesn't have any family. But the people from the village around like take care of her, and it's all very sweet, and she makes friends. And yes, so that's the first part. And she's got this incredible gift, which might not sound so incredible at the beginning. The gift is that she knows how to listen. And what I mean by listening is that she knows how to properly listen to a person, up to the extent that anyone going to her can actually tell her things that they would never have told to anyone or even themselves. So she kind of heals people. She kind of like people come to her and they've got something empty inside, and when they leave, they're full again. And there's a famous advice that the famous like motto of the village is, something's wrong, go and see Momo. And it's kind of like a household phrase. She gets two friends. They're very important. Two best friends, and one is Beppo, who's Beppo is basically he's this kind of Buddhist sweeper. So he just sweeps the streets, and people think he's crazy. People think he's crazy because when they ask him a question, he takes a few hours to answer. And in fact, he's just thinking so much about it that when he answers, they have forgotten the question. And her other friend is a younger man called Gigi, and he's like a tour guide who just invents stories. He's actually got like the fountain of stories in him, so he can actually like come up with any story. Anyway, that's very important for later, because what happens in the second part, which is called The Man in Grey, Oh, and that becomes extremely like you think like first it's like this like little Heidi book, like really innocent, and all of a sudden like I literally had to stop a few times because I thought, my God, this is getting skin deep because this is where it gets really, really metaphysical. The man in gray, or die grauen Herren in German, the gray gentlemen, are these kind of they're not real. They're not real. They're people, but they're kind of like these people figured beings that came out of nothingness, literally, and they start invading the city. In fact, they start invading the city, but they're purposely they don't want to draw attention. What the men in gray do is they're all dressed the same. They're all dressed in gray, kind of gray, the dullest business suits. They've got gray faces, they're bald, and they got gray hats, and they always smoke a cigar. And they're very materialistic. They've got always like kind of expensive toys for the kids and whatever, carrying briefcases. And the man in gray, they go from one person to the next, and what they do is that they actually convince people to give them their time because they have a time savings bank. And this is very relevant because this is 1970s. This was written in, so I kind of want to give you a perspective.
I feel like I remember this concept from some film or other.
Yes, well, there's also a film and an animation made out of this. But the time-saving bank, that was so creepy because basically it's the way the man in gray described it is like, well, how much time do you spend with your mom? And okay, well, spend an hour. Well, you could be spending that hour better, couldn't you? I mean, does she even listen? She's kind of like, oh yeah, you might be right. And you see that girlfriend you've been seeing, will it work out? It's like, no. And it's like, it's a way creeper the way they talk. It's like they come in, they're with their huge cigars, and the way they talk is like described really kind of mechanically. They use numbers like crazy. So it's like, and what Michael Ende does, he's got a great technique. He doesn't actually put the numbers in digits. He puts the numbers in written words, so it becomes really nauseous because all of a sudden, like half a page is like the number 1,000,000. 1,768 or whatever. It's all written in words, and it becomes really nauseous at that point. And I realized that basically the man in gray is a metaphor for us. It's basically we are this. They're time thieves. But when I realized that, I really like I got a bit of a. I wouldn't say panic at that, but really I rarely felt that distraught at that point because I realized, Jesus Christ, the time thief is actually me, because Momo is basically a girl who just like, she has so much time. That's her gift. She just doesn't do anything. She's in the present. Yeah. But the time and thief take away your presence. That's what they do. Because all of a sudden,
dude, I think I need to read this. This sounds amazing.
Because it is amazing, because all of a sudden this relaxed Italian village, and I think that's why it's set in Italy, because it's the ultimate Mediterranean sort of ambience. I think that Michele Ende is getting. When I lived in Italy, I also got that impression, even in modern Italy, that at least in the village, you got this, like they've got a better sense of time of like, let's just be in the present, talk with your friends, just don't worry about later. But all of a sudden, modernism enters the town, and the city becomes huge. And like the village, and like there's the new segment of the city where everything's just the same. Every building is exactly the same. It's all mathematical, and everyone's rushing because they got to save time. And they don't realize this, but they've actually signed a contract with the man in gray, which is basically that they will give them all their free time so that they can invest in the future, so they can live longer. But it's a trick, because as soon as they sign that, they forget that they ever met the man in gray, and they're rushing so that they can save time in the future, which will never come, because they will save time.
Oh, they get swindled as well.
They get swindled as well. And the thing is, I can't say too much, but the man in gray they eat time. They smoke time. They make cigars out of time. And if they don't smoke the people's time, they will die and become nothing again. They came out of nothingness. And the man in gray they don't have names. They just have numbers. And
this sounds amazing.
Anyway, so I can't say more. That's the first half. But like Momo has the ability, because of her being present, she is the only one who can, the time thieves can't get to her. And she has to save the people's time. She has to save people's times and people's lives. And it becomes really more surreal later. I can't tell more. But basically, guys, this is the ultimate novel, which at the same time I think it could have just been called Momo or The Philosophy of Time, full stop.
Okay.
Because that's really what it is. It's the philosophy of time and the philosophy of this, like, how it's like really horrible, like the way modernism, you really are like, please, like, I don't want to live in this modern world where everyone's rushing. And you get like these images, because you get like these images of like rushing Tokyo 80s, that kind of, it's predicting that. And this is in the 70s, but he's already predicting what's going to escalate in the 80s, especially with the economy. And it's genius. And it's really kind of, and there's a lot of Buddhism in there, and it's in Momo and in the Street Sweeper Beppo and in Gigi. That's why I mentioned those three. So they're kind of like the pillars of stories, slowness, and presence. And with these three concepts, you can save yourself. It's ultimately a self-help book, and it really helped me. It really helped me. I actually meditated on the concept of time and like presence, being present.
And am I right in thinking that you read some other stuff that you could meditate to?
Yes. So like I also continued reading the Tao Te Ching. So I've talked about this, and together with Momo and the Tao Te Ching, I've been doing a lot of meditation, going to the caves, and basically, guys, read the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I've recommended before, I recommend again, and read Momo. Tao Te Ching is something that I recommend, and so does Wayne Dyer, who inspired me to read it, the philosopher. So just basically meditate on the verse. It's all about being present. It is actually this Momo concept, being present, not rushing, being in the emptiness. Verse 11, which I was meditating last week, is basically, if I can, I'm going to just paraphrase it from my mind. It's the wheel, the center of the wheel. In the center of the wheel, there's nothing, even though there are 50 parts around the wheel. But it is the emptiness of the wheel that makes it function. It is the emptiness of the wheel that makes it go. A clay vessel, the practicalness of a clay vessel lies not in its material. It lies in its emptiness. Only of the vacuum inside of it can you fill water into it. A room without emptiness is not a room. You need the emptiness in a room to be able to live and to breathe. Even though we work with the material things, it's the emptiness that makes it useful. That's verse 11, paraphrased largely. And basically, it's all about like coming back to your what is your meaning. It's coming back into your emptiness. Actually, it's not really about who you are. Like I'm not me because my body functions. If as Wayne Dyer put it, if I actually dissected every part of my body and still made it be alive somehow, put it on the table, that's not me anymore. It's something beyond the physical. That's me. It's something that's empty. It's something that doesn't exist. I can't touch. That brings use and practicality into my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
We might need to have an off-air discussion about this at some point because it's interesting to me. And I did read myself a month or two ago on your recommendation, the first two verses. But this concept of verse 11 is very interesting because a problem I always have with any kind of personal identity, any idea of the self, is that I'm not a dualist. I'm not like a Cartesian dualist. I kind of want to believe that we are nothing but the body and that the self and the mind don't exist. So I think we can have a very interesting discussion about that sometime.
Definitely, yeah. That could be a full new episode about lots of, yeah. You can also just go to verse 11. I'm doing chronologically. I'm doing one verse per week or 2 weeks. I'm taking it very slow. But yeah, go ahead. So that's what I read for the self-help kind of part. But I'm actually very big into self-help because, I'm doing just for you listeners, I'm actually developing a course with it's my partner, was Alisa, which is basically a course for couples dealing with depression, specifically vegan couples dealing with depression who want to gain higher consciousness and sensuality. So it's a course I'm developing. So therefore, I'm also interested in this kind of stuff as well. Moving on to that, there was I read after Momo and the Tao Te Ching is something I'm doing constantly. But after Momo, I went to the caves, actually, where I go to every few months. And in the caves, I do a lot of meditation, but I also do a lot of reading, actually, to be honest. I do more reading there than I would.
Yeah.
So I really love it because I just switch off and it's just myself, my thoughts, the book I'm reading, and just it's a very empty terrain. It's caves and just like kind of very
Do you
dry
know what I'll
outside.
say,
I love
PJ?
it.
Like I've seen the caves that
Yeah,
you were in, but
you've been there.
I visited. Yeah,
Yeah.
I visited. I don't know if I could spend like a whole day or weekend in a cave like you do. But I should say I've tried to take your advice, not just with reading a meditation book, but I spent most of the
Oh
last
yeah.
month going for walks, like 5-6 hour walks every day in the sun, enjoying gardens, sitting reading on benches, just trying to connect more with the outdoors. So
Nice.
I take your vibes.
Yeah, and I loved your last well, our last, but it was really your work. I loved the waterfall ads you did on TikTok. I thought that was epic. That was really kind of, I
Yes.
could feel the nature.
Oh,
I
that's
loved it.
our confession. But guys, not only are we on Instagram and Twitter, we are now also on the TikToks.
On the
So if you
TikToks.
want to see me twerking or whatever,
It's a
then you can
great
get
ad.
on there.
I love the video. So in the cave, I actually read my dad's novel again. So guys, my dad recently wrote a novel. Which I can't mention title it. Actually, I can't talk too much about it. So we'll talk about it in the future. I actually read it a second time. That's how much I loved it. And once again, I just want to say, I know he's my dad, so yes, yeah, no, definitely, there's an element of that. So yeah, I'm biased. But I can also read more into it. I can a lot in the background. I read that, and similar to Mom, one had a very philosophical sort of bend to it. Also, I also had to stop it a few times. So it's also a very sort of vicious book at times. Can't mention more about. I'll mention in the future. But I'm just saying, guys, sometimes when you go to these caves, maybe just take a book that really means something to you. That book already meant something to me.
One second, PJ, because I support everything you're saying, but you did
Yeah.
just say to the listeners when you go to the caves. Now, I don't know how many of our listeners are also doing cave retreats, but if you are, you know what to do.
Oh, guys, that's what you gotta do. I recommend take a book that you just know that you're going to love, even if I haven't read or so. And reading my dad's book again was really a great way of reconnecting to my dad. I haven't seen for a long time because of COVID. We talk a lot, but just haven't.
Do you know
been on the
I've been
island.
chatting to your dad this week myself,
All
actually.
right, great.
Just about some paintings, just briefly, like not a lot,
Because
but
he's a
just a
painter
little
as well.
bit.
Yeah, awesome. I love the way we're all connected, right? So I mentioned that in the future when it's published, great book. Looking forward to it. Let me move on to the next book. Yeah, sorry, it's a lot of books I've been reading.
This is the most you've ever read, actually.
Well, it's been a good reading month. I can't talk about my dad's novel, even though it's the one I want to talk the most about. So just look forward to it. I'll let you know more. Kyron Burke, he's just releasing No Explanation, his new movie, which is in film festivals. So look about for that. And there also his CD is coming out, the soundtrack of it. So have a look up. Kyron Burke.
We played 2 songs from the new album on previous episodes. I believe episodes 3 and 4. So feel free to go back and check those out, guys.
The Limelight, yeah, feel free. So the book I read straight after my dad, very relevant because it's kind of related to my dad. It's a book by Hermann Hesse, who he has also mentioned when we did the interview with my dad, and me too. It's one of our favorite authors. And Hermann Hesse, guys, he is a German author, won the Nobel Prize in 1946, I believe. He wrote Steppenwolf, was most famous. Siddhartha is also very famous. He, at his 60s, he was the most popular non-English author in the world.
Wow.
Generally, yeah, especially in America and Japan, definitely. Because he very much was a kind of like a pre-hippie. So like his books are very sort of, Steppenwolf is very sort of trippy. I mean, they even had a band, Steppenwolf, Easy Rider. That
I was going to say that's a band, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because they're very much in the 60s. They loved his because Hermann Hesse grew up in a kind of a spiritual family, and who often went to India and preached. Religious kind of spiritual family, but he didn't really become so religious, more Buddhist and spiritual, and you can get that Buddhism in his books. And Narcissus and Goldmund was actually set in medieval Germany, not really what you expect to be hippie-esque. is really about free love, like in the most innocent sense, I think, as well. Not and also about intellectualism. It's about that conflict. It's one of my favorite books. But the book I read is a very short novella. Was hand drawn and handwritten by his friend Peter Weiss, and it's beautiful because it's actually got this novel which is handwritten, and they just basically, it's not obviously handwritten, but basically it's drawn, and they kind of like just did. It's basically a picture book, so it's handwritten, if you know what I mean. So you're just reading the actual writing of his friend Peter Weiss and the drawings he did for Hermann Hesse's little story called Kindheit eines Zauberers, the childhood of a magician. So it's another German book, guys. And the childhood of a magician is a very little known novella or even fairy tale by Hermann Hesse, but it's totally worth it. It's autobiographical in a very magical realist sense about how Hermann Hesse actually wanted to become a magician instead of a writer when he was a kid. And it's really beautiful. It's a very short read, but really simplistic, showing you the magic of childhood and how we lose that magic of childhood. That's basically what the whole story is about. And it's about him growing up, and he can see the beauty of the world. He can see the colors. He can talk to animals. He can even do a tiny bit of magic in himself, in the sense of that what he wishes comes true. And it's really beautiful, and it's kind of like it's very much a Little Prince kind of novella.
Mm-hmm.
The illustrations, the pace, the short is this parable about you can regain your childhood, just become more aware and let go of your adult's kind of self and needs.
Okay.
So again, guys, I've been reading a lot of these kind of like parables about basically kind of like it's Momo, Dao De Ching, and Childhood of a Magician. It's all about coming back to your roots, which is for me at the moment very interesting. Coming back to basics, you know. Just don't make it too detailed. And guys, I've got to say, we're finishing up now. I've got to mention one last novel. We meant to keep it short, so I'm going to keep it short. But I do have to mention the novel I also started reading this on the cave. So I really did a lot of reading on that weekend, because this is the third novel I started reading in this cave. And guys, this is very different. We're getting very political, actually. This is Ngugi wa Thiong'o's book, Devil on the Cross. Have you ever heard of Ngugi wa Thiong'o?
No, never.
So he is Kenya's foremost author. He had to leave Kenya because his books were too politically, obviously, controversial. Ngugi wa Thiong'o, he started writing in English under colonialist Kenya, and just before it became independent, or during the time it became independent, he also started realizing that he didn't want to write in this colonial language. And in fact, I think he called himself James Thiong'o, because they all had Christian names before, and he got rid of it and he called himself his birth name, Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I can hardly pronounce it. This guy I've read his novel, The River Between, which was before it became really political, and it's also heavy going, but really easy to read. But this one is a lot later, 1980, and he doesn't even write in English anymore. He says he just won't write in English, even though he's fluent in English. He wrote in his own language, Gikuyu. And really, guys, Devil on the Cross is such a powerful novel. It is one of the darkest novels I've read out. They're one of those horrific kind of novels. If you want to understand post-colonial Kenya, about Kenyans actually abusing fellow Kenyans, not really about the white colonists anymore, which he might have written about at the beginning. No, he's talking about like we're independent, but we're actually worse now than we were before. We've taken these white norms. He does criticize still white culture a lot, but he focuses on how these rich people are abusing, poor poor Kenyans. But it's really relevant because the protagonist is a woman, Jacinta Waringa. And she's really interesting because she goes through hell and hell again. And it's really about her finding her ultimate role and becoming, like, no matter what because really, like, the villains are men in Devil on the Cross. Not all of them, but like most of them, they're men. And she's kind of like saying, like, well, no matter what happens, I'm going to make Kenya strong again. Kind of like, and there's a lot of kind of metaphors of womb and womanhood and babies. And like the devil on the cross, like she keeps dreaming about a black devil, actually. That's the way she describes it. Yes, and she's using these kind of racist terms, really, but because in her mind, really, it's like this is beyond dark skins, and it's very hard to understand, actually, because this is the opposite of like white nationalism. She's talking about like the ultimate sort of Kenyan who goes astray, and he's not anymore in his roots. He's kind of, all right, so I am Kenyan, but I've taken up these white norms, and inside I have a white cold heart, and it's the devil on the cross. Basically, it's just a metaphor, but the devil on the cross is not a white man. It's a Kenyan man, and it's very shocking, actually, the things that the people she encounters that try to take advantage of her.
Okay,
that's all I'm going to mention. It's about post-colonial Kenya, guys. Shocking stuff. Sorry if I was a bit graphic in it, but it's really shocking but really relevant, I find, as well. So,
okay. I'm PJ, now that we've talked about what we're going to read, obviously we'll close with our recommendations as always. But just quickly, I want to quickly touch on a couple of pieces of AOB. So guys, if you want to get in touch, you can of course email booksboys@hotmail.com. That's where you can get in touch with us. Tell us what you're reading. There's still more mystery books to be given out to anyone who you can be entered every month. I give one book away to anyone who would like to tell me what they're reading. We did get some feedback just this morning, actually. Some feedback came in. They like our accents, PJ. That was all we got, but they like our accents, so I'll take that. I forget the name of the chap, but yeah, we were told this morning that we have nice accents.
Is that the comments? You have nice accents.
Yeah, I like your accents. That's literally all it said.
Well, thanks very much. That's very charming.
We got that. We should say as well, in the webcam this month, we are joined. We've got myself. We've got a very sexy shirtless PJ, Indeed. And we've got the little meerkat bringing you the show today in the webcam sessions. Guys, if you want more of the show, and of course you do, patreon.com/booksboys. Now, did you know you can increase your own worth? Because, everyone always says, well, a paying listener is worth 1,000 free listeners. So increase your own worth for yourself and for us and get us some support on there. Patreon.com/booksboys. I'll tell you what you get. You get the episode a day, the main episode a day early. That's fine.
That's nice.
It's only £2.50 or £2.50 or $3 per month. It's about €3 as well.
It's a bargain.
And you also get the Caper Captains, which is our Agatha Christie murder mystery reviews. Ooh. You get, we've just done our first film fellows, and there's a second one to come.
Spicy.
There's some Playboys and things on there as well, which is our Shakespeare's. There's interviews from the vault with musicians. There's so much stuff on there. There's a Poetry Pals. So there's a lot of stuff on there. And, there's not like a specific, we're going to do the same things every month, but every month there's something extra going on there. Exactly, so there's always going to be some content, built up over time. So it's worth checking out. And if you want to donate more, you can actually tell us what to read on the show or get a t-shirt. So there's a lot of stuff you can do.
And don't forget, guys, especially Playboys, we've got to raise 6 episodes of Shakespeare going into one play at a time in depths. And they're quite long, actually, quite detailed as well. So
the idea was mini episodes, but some of them ended up being like full,
really long.
Almost an hour, like full episodes. Yeah.
So there you go, guys. So we want to listen to it.
Yeah. And also, let's just say hello to our patrons, but also to everyone from the TNC network, and of course, everyone listening in Oxford on Radio Oxon. So hello from myself, PJ, and the little meerkat who's joined us today.
Hello.
Now, PJ, did you know that this month's sponsor is protectressofmyheart.gov?
Oh,
So the new government agency for the Dumas style protectress of my heart. If you want to find yourself a nice little coquette to be your protectress, you can certainly do that.
good lord.
And also, we're sponsored, of course, by Norwood Investing LLC, and I'll put the link in the show notes and on booksboys.com. We are an investment center focusing on helping you become more financially independent. We will help you grow your wealth by creating a comprehensive case plan that best suits your goals. Once we do this, we will start diversifying your assets through stocks, bonds, ETFs, and much more. We also offer courses on trading stocks, bonds, options, and spreads, as well as setting up an IRA based on your risk tolerance. Courses are part of the subscription for no extra charge, and all the services are $650 for a year. That's 12 months of service. So it's Norwood Investing LLC.
Now we're going to have a quick ad break to hear from one or two other great podcasts, and then PJ and I will be back with our recommendations.
So, what are you going to listen to now?
You could browse endless podcast lists and take a shot.
You could ask your mates and wait for no one to reply.
Or you could listen to us, your friendly castologists, the professional pickers of all things podcast.
Zane, Nick, and Liz listen to all the things, so you don't have to, and find the best podcast that should be on your radar.
Every Monday, we're coming at you with 3 hand-picked podcast recommendations.
Then we review each other's selections so you know what's really good.
Will we always agree with each other's picks?
Yeah, probably not.
But hey, you're clever. You know how that's how reviews work.
You got this.
A That's Not Canon Productions podcast.
Do you like murder, true crime, real-life documentaries? Well, that's not this podcast. We talk about our favorite movies, least favorite movies, and on occasion, brand new movies. Do you want to feel validated in your hatred of a movie or a character? Do you want someone who also notices the odd clothing choices, or which villain is actually a low-key hero? Then tune in to Two Chicks Talkin' Flicks. Episodes available on all streaming platforms.
And I should mention, I actually listen myself to Two Chicks Talking Flicks every week. We did a crossover episode. Myself and Sarah, we talked about both the book and movie of Psycho, and that's up on our feed as a bonus episode. It's actually Film Fellows episode 1, so you can get that already on all the podcast feeds, booksboys.com, Apple, and Spotify. Okay, so PJ, we're going to have our recommendations. One thing I'll very quickly say first. Did you know that on the 3rd of July, we have an album coming out?
Indeed, yes. My God. So this is going to be... Yes?
So we have I have my own album.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Album,
yes, I
so
knew there was something else.
There's 2 albums, actually. You can get this in Spotify, Amazon. The clips are on TikTok. It's in all the places that you buy music and listen to music. So I went through over 200 songs that I had made over 12 years. Well, it's called The Dozen Most Listenable, but the trick is it's a baker's dozen because it's 13 songs and it was over 12 years, but it's actually over 13 years. And I made, and I put together some of the songs. So with a very cheesy 80s album cover, and that's going to be on Spotify from July 3rd. But it didn't include any songs we'd worked on together because we have a second album, both of us, and again, I lied because it's got a decade of friendship, but it was actually songs made over an 11-year period. So I'm rounding all the numbers, but yeah. So we have another dozen songs from the 2 of us. Now, we've played a couple of our songs on the show before, but what I'm going to close, someone said actually that I've never played yet on the show just one of my own songs by myself. So I thought, well, since the album's launching, I'll play La Cara Cara at the end of this episode.
The classic, which is also available on YouTube, guys, if you want to have a listen to that one.
It's also on YouTube, actually, yeah.
Nice one, yeah.
Well done. You knew more than I thought.
Just, I follow your YouTube, our YouTube all the time. Love it, yeah.
Very good. So La Cara Cara's on there. I'll have to put up a single from the joint album as well. I'll do that tomorrow.
Nice.
But PJ, do you want to go first with the recommendations or shall I?
Well, guys, talking about Ngugi wa Thiong'o, I love his name, by the way. I want to recommend the first novel I read by his. I read it twice. I liked it that much. It's called The River Between, which is, let's just say, it's a Romeo and Juliet story about two basic. It's a village parted in 2. They've got one is very pro-Christian, and one is just like we're not going there. We're going to stick to our tribe, to our Gikuyu traditions. We don't want that. One of them, they follow different routes, and it's a great Romeo and Juliet story. Except it's a lot more intriguing because you've got all these political, Christian, nationalist, tribal sort of conflicts as well. And as well, the protagonist, the Romeo figure, he kind of just wants to educate his own tribe. So the Gikuyu tribe, he kind of doesn't agree 100% with Gikuyu. He also agrees partially with the Christians. And then he's ultimately kind of stuck, let's just say, in the river between the two. And so is she, who's technically supposed to be a Christian, yet she feels inside her blood that she wants to belong to the Gikuyu. And so it becomes very interesting. So read it, The River Between.
And I've got 2 recommendations, BJ. The first one is The Vanished Man, 2003, by Jeffrey Deaver, who actually wrote one of the recent James Bond novels. But he's most famous for this series of novels about a disabled, a paraplegic cop, Lincoln Rhyme.
Okay.
So he's actually a retired cop, but he's so intelligent and so experienced that the police use him essentially as a consultant still. Right. So it's himself and 1 or 2 sets of cops that he works with, including his partner Amelia Sachs. Now the most famous one is the first novel in the series, The Bone Collector. That was made into a rather poor movie. But no, I didn't think much of the film, to be honest. But this one is The Vanished Man, and you mentioned about magic earlier, so that's this fits in very, very well. And this one, the criminal is a magician. Okay. I should say, by the way, the Bone Collector movie stars Angelina Jolie and Denzel Washington. Maybe I'm the only one who thought it was garbage because they're good actors. I don't know. But so what we have is, he everyone's coming to him for his advice. It's in New York. He's the ultimate kind of experienced cop. He's got databases for forensic evidence. He works a lot in forensics. That's his thing. So like he's not a Poirot type character. It's all about the evidence. Okay. And he's a mean, snappish kind of guy. But I guess if you were disabled in an accident and almost lost your life and career, you would be too, maybe. But he's lovable as well. You kind of have to see through the exterior. And yeah, so they catch this villain who kills people by using magician's tricks, basically, in a killing way. A bit of Alice Cooper vibe in there, doing the tricks in a murderous kind of way. It's the 5th in the series, but it was the first one I read that got me in, and then I went and read dozens of Jeffrey Deaver novels. So I really, really recommend that one. But PJ, my other recommendation, I don't know if you've heard of this now. It's a book called Raising St. Elizabeth by Leah Holbrook Sackett.
Well, you know what? I have heard of her. Now, that sounds like an interesting book. I haven't read it yet. Wow, okay.
It's an interesting one. If you want to combine Judeo-Christian mythology with fairy tales like Rumpelstiltskin, with just mysticism mixed with realism and a whole lot of different stuff going on, it's a really interesting one to talk about.
Kind of bit. Angela.
Oh, PJ, 2 seconds. I think that actually I hear the phone ringing.
What?
Shall we see who's calling in?
I suppose we better check it out. I hope it's not that bill about that tea party we had, drinking so much tea the other day.
They're always sending us bills for that.
Let's check it out then. Not true.
Oh, so PJ, I'm just going to answer the phone here, and who've we got on the line?
Well, who is it?
This is Leah Holbrook Sackett.
Oh my God!
Hi, Leah.
that's a crazy coincidence. We were just
talking. It keeps happening. Like I don't know how.
Yeah, we're just talking about it.
That's amazing.
Oh my God! I can't believe the amount of coincidences in this show. But wow, it's great having you. How are you?
I'm good. Wasn't nervous calling in, but
oh well, look, don't be too nervous. We're just 2 chaps talking about books. That's how we are. Oh, this is awesome.
So Leah, why don't we introduce you a little bit to the listeners? So why don't you tell us a little bit about your writing and what you do?
Okay. I mostly write short stories. I've had over 75 published short stories in different journals. Most of that during COVID.
Wow.
COVID was great for me. I was very productive. I had 3 books published. 2 collections of short stories, and 1 a novella that's a hybrid magical realism and historical fiction.
Oh, I like that.
And I guess it's basically what I write. I'm trying my hand at an actual novel because I was 5,000 words short of a novel when I wrote my novella. and I was just like, no, the story is done. I'm not going to put a bunch of fluff in it.
Don't pad it out. Yeah.
You're not going to do the Tolstoy Anna Karenina method, which is just basically you have a short story and then you have an agriculture manual and build around it. You're not going to do that.
Yes, we always joke about Anna Karenina. It's about 50 pages of novel, 700 pages of farming manual. You know.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to write something people might want to read, not what they have to read because it was assigned.
No, I get it. Oh, awesome! And hold on a second, did you write most of that during COVID? Like a great majority of those.
My first book that was published, I wrote that during my MFA.
Okay, yes.
That was my dissertation. I just didn't publish it till last summer. And and I had time suddenly. Yeah. And then everything else I wrote during COVID. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Because I had looked on your site, and obviously there's a huge amount, as you say, over 70 stories. But I had assumed that you'd done that over a decade or something.
No.
Not all of it in the last year. Wow.
Yeah. Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, it's just like a fountain. I don't know. In fact, I have 2 novels I'm working on, and then I got an idea the other day for another novel, and I was almost like, "Oh no!"
Oh, but that's awesome. So, and you're still in this creative flow. It's not stopping. It's just it keeps on coming. And what made you? Can you pinpoint it? What made you so inspired? Was it just as COVID started? Was it the lockdown that you were kind of locked in your room and you had to write, or what was it?
Well, yeah, kind of. There was nothing else to do. So, and there was nothing else for me to let it make excuses that I had to do this or I had to do that. I had nothing,
Wow.
But also I have an illness and I had been sick the past several years. Okay. So I didn't get really anything out during that time frame, and I'm healthy now. And so now it's just like I'm just taking advantage of that, and
now's the time to go for it.
Yeah.
Inspiring. Wow. That's great. Congratulations on getting so much stuff done.
Yeah.
And I love the blend of magical realism and historical. What was it? Historical
fiction. Yeah.
Okay.
I was reading about Raising Saint Elizabeth, PJ, and there's a lot of different vibes in there. You've got the realism, you got the fiction.
I love that.
Some Rumpelstiltskin stuff going on.
Yes.
I was surprised to see that it is only a novella because it sounds like there's a lot of different ideas in there.
Yeah. I'm pretty tight with my words because I write short stories. So I think that's how I could take so much and just condense it into a very solid piece. Because I write short stories, and that's what you do in a short story. You don't have the room to elaborate too far. I also don't want to tell the story in the sense where I'm telling the reader what to think. I want to give them enough room to make the connections themselves.
Love that. Wow.
Right. So would you say that you don't maybe close off every single idea? You let people kind of think on it themselves then? Or
Yes. Like not everyone picks up on the Rumpelstiltskin. And they're still happy with the book, but it is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin in a sense.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's curious. So go ahead, BJ.
No, I just love the mixture of genres and the way you describe it. The way it's described on your site, that's just a mixture of different stories. It's all very fantastic. It's all very creative. I love that when I write myself. I love to be, I love Angela Carter and I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I love all those magic realists and a bit of, it's realism, but with a bit of magic, and that's what I love, and that's why I'm getting. Those are the vibes I'm getting from your kind of fiction. Would you say that's true?
Yes. I have other pieces that are magical realism. I think I'm kind of subtle with my magical realism, like in Raising Saint Elizabeth. There is magical realism, but I also very heavily built it off of Judeo-Christian mythology. I was raised Catholic and then I converted to Judaism. So I got the whole scope going. And
Interesting.
And so I put that all of that in there. And, sometimes I would stop, take take a step back, look at it. Is this too much?
Wow. And can I ask you about your working schedule? That always interests me. When do you write, or do you have a schedule? And when do you write?
I do have a routine.
Okay.
I like routines, but I am never going to be the kind of person that just sticks straight to it. No, I'd pull my hair out. But I generally get up every day, whether it's Monday through Friday or the weekend, around 7:30, 8:30, make my espresso, sit down, go through my email, and then I just start writing. Sundays I could write for 4 hours. Some days I could write for 8 hours.
Wow.
It just depends on what's there, that urge to get it out.
Balzac style then, just a coffee and constant writing.
never sleeping. Wow. No, I like that. Yeah. That is awesome. Would you also write, what I'm curious about lately is about authors. Now I've read like some authors, they just go to their office and they just write. But I also think about like inspiration and like write, but also like when you feel like stopping. Now, do you believe more in the technique of just write and I'm not really feeling it, but I'm just going to stick to it? Or do you feel like you should stop when you don't feel the urge anymore? Even if it's not coming on that day and you like might have to sacrifice one day. How do you feel about that?
I would prefer to just write and push through it.
Wow. Okay.
But sometimes you just can't, and so you have to know when to let it go. And I normally, when I let it go, because I'm not really doing that, I have multiple stories I work on at a time. So if I get stuck on one, I'll just hop over to one of the other ones, and it usually kind of frees me up, and I'm like, oh, that's what I wanted to do, and then I can go back.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. That surprises me. I would have thought that working on, I couldn't even read 2 books at the same time, never mind write 2, like I would have thought working on 2 things at once would be more confusing and more difficult, no?
No, I find it freeing. Because you can get in there with a story and the characters are they're doing things you're not expecting them to do. It's going off on a tangent, and you got to get rid of that chapter. It's not working. And instead of just giving up and walking away, I just I pull up a different story that I'm not stuck on, and then it kind of bolsters you.
I like that.
Yeah.
Never thought about that.
Tell me about the inspiration for the cover art, actually, of Raising St. Elizabeth, because I love that cover art.
Oh, thank you. It is based on the Adam Eve apple orchard temptation aspect of her in the orchard with Milton. And
that's great. Yeah,
all of Milton is named for John Milton. And like I said, there's a lot of Judeo-Christian mythology built in there with names of characters and what they do. And I don't know, but I don't give too much away. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. And you're talking about the 7 deadly sins. So that's like the first. That's like the first sin. Sure, that's what broke. That's what broke Adam and Eve's innocent relationship. I love it. And do you? Because we were just talking about the other month about. We were just talking about Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, and about. I'm not sure if you ever read it. So
no, I haven't.
Well, it's a great play about sin, basically, and about the devil. It just reminds me a bit of probably not like your novel at all, novella, but it's basically the 7 deadly sins. They're personified, and basically they're just. It's a great sort of metaphorical story about a man who sells his soul to the devil.
That sounds great.
Do you think it would be interesting for you? So I like that idea that you talk about, about these stories that are based on Judeo-Christian beliefs and mythology, and that you're giving it a new kind of perspective, perhaps, or just a retelling. Because that's always, I find those stories very interesting, but the language is often so archaic. It's so old-fashioned.
Yeah,
you just need to redo it, or maybe I love when they give it a feminist perspective, like Angela Carter did, or something like that. I know that's also great.
Yeah, I was Raising St. Elizabeth started just as a short story, the first chapter.
Okay.
And I got the idea. I was at a poetry reading, and they were reading something, and they were saying St. John, which in America we could say St. John. And I was like, how does somebody get a name like that? That's, and I thought, I wonder if there's a female equivalent. And so I had the idea of naming a character Saint, Saint Elizabeth is what I chose. And I thought, what kind of life would you lead with a name like that? That is really how it all got started. Wow. And then at one point, I don't know, I was turning it into a Romeo and Juliet love affair thing. And I'm like, I don't like this, where this is going. So I had to cut the story in half. I probably would have had a novel, cut the story in half and focus. I didn't want her to be saved by a man.
Right. Good.
I like that. Yeah. It's cool.
She had to be her own hero. I mean, she had support, but she had to be her own hero.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's what you need, especially for, the kids. And when I talk about not just the kids, but women nowadays, they just you need to switch it around a bit. You can't have the Romeo saving. Well, if Romeo doesn't save Juliet, but you can't have this Romeo figure. You can't have this male figure all the time saving. Girl, save yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's quickly touch on the other two releases that you had. So that's Swimming Middle River, and I love the name of this, White Knight Escort Service.
Thank you.
That's cool.
And again, the artwork for this is brilliant.
Cool titles.
These are great titles. So the White Knight Escort Service, I mean, because that touches in with what we were kind of talking about a moment ago, but, is that more your traditional, is this a White Knight savior type vibe?
Yes, and, it's Tennille's drawings there of Alice and the White Knight. Mm-hmm. I'm a big Alice fan. I belong to the Lewis Carroll North America Society.
Cool.
Yeah, and so I love coming of age stories, and so I write them all the time. I would think that I would exhaust it at some point, but no, I still want to write about that, and so. The White Knight escorting Alice through the woods really kind of encompassed all those stories that are in there. So my stories are a little more perverse. They're not child friendly like Alice, but
right.
Let's be honest, Lewis Carroll has some dubious claims on him, but all right, yeah, okay. But I mean, that's cool that you're so it's basically like an adult fairy tale.
It's stories for adults for sure, but awesome. It's usually the main character in all those stories is a child trying to grapple with an adult world, and I don't know why I am so drawn to that, but I am. And I'm not in my office right now. My husband took over the office during COVID, and so the whole office is done in Alice, and I have Alice in the dining room where I'm at, and the kitchen, and the bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a fun one to do.
Well, let me ask you something, because you've been doing a massive amount of writing, obviously during the COVID pandemic. Have you had a chance to do much reading?
Not as much as I normally would. Yeah. And I thought, I got to read. I have to read because I'm writing. But I guess I've done so much reading up to this point that it kind of had carried me. But I am back to reading. It was
cool. And what's the last book you've read, or what are you working on at the moment?
Right now, I'm reading Station 11.
Oh,
okay.
And it's a dystopic world where the world was hit with a pandemic, and what the aftermath of that is like. And I'm like, wow, did this person write this during COVID?
Wow. Okay, I love dystopia. Are you enjoying it?
I am enjoying it. Before that, I read The Woman in the Window. Which was about an agoraphobe psychologist.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, wow, okay. Well, I love a bit of dystopia. So
we both love dystopia.
Yeah.
We're thinking about maybe in the future doing a dystopia, themed episode specifically. Yeah.
One of my new novels is dystopia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
One that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, it's big. It's going to take a while. I just have to, just be okay with that.
Wow.
It's eugenics and euthanasia and big pharma and life insurance and health insurance and
everything.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a favorite dystopian novel? one that really
Took the words right out of my mouth, PJ.
Yeah, I don't know.
Favorite, I guess I would have to say 1984.
Yes.
It's a classic. Yeah,
When he came up with Ingsoc, the language and all that, I'm like,
I
oh
know
my
that's
God,
insane, right?
he predicted texting.
Yep.
I'm like, that's amazing.
It's so good. He predicted. I mean, I love the concept of like, you know, take away the words justice from a language, and you know, if you don't have the word in your language, you're not brought up with the concept, then why should you ever necessarily think about it? It would be very hard to rebel. So it's a clever idea. Oh, it's so good. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's I need to reread it.
It's a true masterpiece. And sometimes I walk along and I see things in the modern world, and I just say, like, have these people not read 1984?
Yes,
like, come on, guys.
Except they're all little brothers. That's the only thing. Little brothers instead of big brothers.
Brothers, yeah.
But otherwise, he's got it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And do you want to tell us briefly then, before we wrap up, about you do some writing teaching as well?
Yes, but it's on the more boring side. Business writing and copywriting. Copywriting can be fun. I've won 2 awards doing that when I used to do that as a full-time job. I wrote for Tidy Cats, and I had to do a whole dialogue and create a screenplay for sweepstakes, and there were these little animated cats, and
wow.
So that's kind of writing that I teach. I like all of it. It's all got its purpose. And I like having something that students can walk away from with and take it with them, really take it with them.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think that's a good kind of, you know, you've got a very kind of structured, you know how to write. Do you know what I mean? It's not just kind of like, oh, I've got great stories. And yeah, but you kind of know you got the backbone, you got that skeleton of writing, which is good, I think, even if it's maybe less creative stuff. So I mean,
yeah, I mean, even if it's a different kind of writing, it's always good to actually be taught by someone who has done the thing, you know. So,
how to write.
Yeah.
But
PJ, do you have any more questions before I move on to the final question?
I've got so many questions, but hold on a second, but because I'm really inspired by all that you say, I've just got one more question, and that question is, why should people read? All right.
Ooh,
that's a tough question, but why do you think people should read?
So they can get to know themselves.
That's a good answer.
I think when you read, you go into those characters and you see what fits you and what doesn't. And I think that a good story challenges you to grow, to get a new perspective on the world. And I think that's why people should read.
Wow. I like that.
Otherwise, they're just going to like watch YouTube.
Yeah. Well, you're right. You do get to know yourself because it's a different experience. You don't gain the same. You don't take the same thing away from watching YouTube or even a full length show. There's something special about reading. I've always thought.
Yeah.
I was going to say you brought up Swimming Middle River earlier. Just last week, that was blocked on Amazon as offensive.
Whoa.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Yeah, and they put it back up within a couple hours. My publisher got it back up, but there's a story in there about pedophilia, and I guess somebody was not comfortable with that.
Okay.
But I was like, my husband's like, "That's good. You got banned. That's great."
Yeah, it's great.
So you're not afraid to touch on difficult subjects, then?
No, not at all. And my father wonders why I write about sex so much, but I'm like, because it's interesting. And often I find it humorous, but
oh yeah,
I'm his daughter. He doesn't want to see that.
and now you belong to the Huxley, the Harper Lee, that clan of kind of, we've been banned authors, but we're awesome. So like, congratulations. There are many of those in the US, and now you're part of it, even though it's just temporarily. It kind of gives you a cool status. Don't worry about it. But I know Dean has a question, but I just want to say that I think that's great. Because sometimes I think, like, why should sometimes reading be a often uncomfortable experience? But then you remind me, and answers like yours remind me that, wait a second, sometimes we need this. Sometimes we need a lack of comfort. Sometimes we need to be shocked and realize, as you kind of said, like, delve into these characters and realize that maybe you don't want to be like them, see a different perspective, understand what's going on in the world, So I think that's very necessary to talk about dark themes. We can't just always talk about light themes. So
I agree.
We can't just read Pride and Prejudice over and over again, right?
Oh, but I have.
That's nice too, right? That's nice too.
When I was pregnant with my daughter, I read that to her. I started with Jane Eyre, and I was like, Jane Eyre's too dark for a fetus. So
that's going to be the quote: Jane Eyre's too dark for a fetus.
So I read her Pride and Prejudice.
Okay. Actually, at the moment, I've been working my way through Jane Austen. Actually, so just while we're on the topic, do you have a favorite Jane Austen? Would it be Pride and Prejudice?
It is Pride and Prejudice. Yeah.
Go. Mine's actually Northanger Abbey, which is a strange choice, but
Austen is excellent in everything. You know, it was good enough for my baby.
There we go.
There you go.
Well, look. Let me ask you the final question that we ask everyone then, and I'll take you unawares. But if there's any classic book or any it can be anything really, fiction, nonfiction, whatever. But if there's any kind of piece of literature that you wish you had written, what would it be?
Well, it probably would be Alice. Because I'm such a huge fan of that. But also, I really liked Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yes, it's a great book.
I've probably read that like 7 or 8 times, and I would write in the margins and highlight it. And it was interesting just to see my shift in perspectives as I got older. And I would read it every winter. I guess I'm a little obsessive. I don't know. But but that one and Kate Chopin's The Awakening.
Okay. Well, I actually don't know the Kate Chopin novel, but I must say Strangerland Heinlein is such a unusual kind of science fiction novel that's very, very bizarre, very ahead of it. I mean, Heinlein in general was very kind of, ahead of his time, wasn't he? Kind of this nudist kind of, what is he, left wing? Is he right wing? Is he liberal? Well, what is he like? Is he military? Is he pacifist? And he's kind of like a strange sort of science fiction figure. I mean,
yeah, and I think that's one of those books that depends on when in your life you pick it up. How it's going to impact you. I was in my late teens, so he had so much in there that I was like, what? I never thought of that.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
There's certain things that you need to read more than once. PJ, you'll remember this. We used to have a philosophy lecturer who always said you need to read the complete works of Plato twice, once as a student and once as an old man. You gotta see the difference between them.
Gotta keep reading them.
I've done one. I'm waiting for the second one when I get older.
And me too, Leah. I also reread like maybe 15 specific novels 1,000 times. If you got a novel that there's just so much into it, and you can reread it, and then you see something else, and it's like it's really a wonderful experience.
I need to do that more, because to be honest, I very, very rarely do go back and read something. There's only maybe 2 or 3 novels I really have read more than once. I always just want more. When I complete all the novels in the world, I'll do round 2. But
there's so much about rereading. I love it.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you.
We'll pop a link to your site, obviously, on our blog, on our post on the episode, and of course, all the works are available. There's links on your site, and of course on Amazon as well. So we'll link those out for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to plug?
I don't think so. Just writing away. I'll let you know.
Do you have any word of advice to young and elderly inspiring authors, anyone who wants to write? What do you advise?
When I was in my late teens, I had a teacher tell me this, and he was so right. He said, don't talk about your story, because if you tell everyone the whole plot and everything you're planning on, you get rid of that urge to get the story out, and you'll never write it.
Right.
And I
keep it inside.
Yeah, so I do that religiously.
I totally agree with you there. I also do that actually with my writing. Don't tell anyone. It's not the same anymore. Don't tell anyone.
It is. I don't know why, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah, totally. Wow.
Fair enough. Well, Leah, thank you so much for calling in, and I hope that you have a great afternoon. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
It's awesome. Good luck with your writing. Can't wait to read it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay.
Wow. Well, PJ, what a pleasure it was to speak with Leah. And by the way, guys, Leah Holbrook Socket. I'll put the link in the notes, but leahholbrooksocket.com or on Amazon, and everything as well. So what I should say then is, I think that we're going a little bit longer than we planned. Shall we wrap up our super concise episode?
Yeah, or super concise. This might be 5 minutes shorter than the last one, but look, that's what the audience gets and what wants. So we're over delivering.
We had a trend. We got longer, and then all of a sudden, episode 7 was a few seconds shorter than episode 6. And I thought, we've broken the trend. And then episode 8 was just insanely long.
Wow.
So we just
as our hair is getting longer, so are our episodes.
We're both getting some very long hair at the moment. Guys, I think that, as I say, booksboys.com for the general portal to everything. All the social media links are on there, links to iTunes, whatever else. And yes, we do say there's music, coming out if you want to support us, patreon.com/booksboys. But sometimes the biggest way to support us is just to tell a friend to listen or maybe leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice.
And if you're interested in meditation, especially for meditation for couples, well, why don't you check out theholywholesomelife.com and check out what
there's a link there on booksboys.com to that as well. Cool. Well, what we'll do is we'll take you out with La Cara Cara. And if the DJ will please spin that record, and we'll be back in about a month.
Sits alone in her room. She feels like she's in a tomb. Pretty girl in a painting she sees every night. That's who I'll be in my next life. She replies to an ad looking for a girl. This is a chance to change her whole world. Should she apply to this modeling agency? She tells herself that ad was just made for me. Many thoughts racing in her mind. Should she go now or wait till next time? Is she pretty enough? Does she have the right body? She convinces herself that ad was just made for me. I interview with uncomfortable questions. What should she do with so many suggestions? They brush her hair and make up her face, and just like a doll, put her in a cute dress. White screens, bright lights, so many photos, shouting instructions for so many poses. She's exhausted having second thoughts, or until babe, she should have been so easily bought. The photo shoot was not a success, even though she'd tried her best. She goes home and cries full of despair, rips off a doll's dress and tears out her hair. 2 weeks later comes a call on the telephone. A man saw the shoot and wants to meet her all alone. He's a famous artist and he wants to paint her. Tells her this is a chance to give her world a shaker. Painting was commissioned for a large amount. Both the artist and the girl enlarge their bank accounts. She goes to the gallery on opening night, sees herself on the wall and shrieks with delight. She's done it all, her story's at an end. She's a true star now, doesn't have to pretend. No one can ever put her in her place. They've all come to see the expensive face.
Books Boys was presented by The Dean and PJ Burke in association with Thaddeus Penguin Productions. This episode was brought to you by our sponsor, protectressofmyheart.gov. If you would like to get in touch, you can email us at booksboys@hotmail.com or visit us at booksboys.com. The intro uses Driving in the 70s from the Of Soundtracks and Garage Bands EP by Trapdoor. And the outro uses Dog's Light by Bravo Max from the album of the same name. All music used is either PodSafe or used with permission. If you'd like to support the show, click on the Amazon or Audible referral links on booksboys.com or go to patreon.com/booksboys and get all of the Bufanda Boys bonus shows. Thank you kindly for listening to us. Please tell your friends and come back next time for another episode of Books Boys. Read some books! Well, PJ, we came in 10 minutes shorter, 9 minutes shorter in the end, so that's something. But coming up soon, we've got our film fellows with Nightmare on Elm Street. And next month, I'm only reading one book, Count of Monte Cristo, all month.